And the anger of God was kindled against Moses. And finally Moses got it in here. And finally he got it in here. And every excuse that Moses offered, God shot it down. And finally Moses responded to the call. And guess what? Guess what God said? Take in your hand the staff with which you shall perform the signs. Take what is in your hand, Moses. That which is in your hand is very important to me. I want it, Moses. Take it. And God blessed everything that Moses did. Why? Because Moses gave what he had in his hands to God. It's just a staff, Lord. But the staff which Moses had in his hand became a weapon mightier than the armies of Pharaoh. And it brought the children of Israel to freedom. I almost cried. I get emotional sometimes, but tears almost came in my eyes, or did, maybe a little bit, when I saw Kristen down here with the children. And it reminds me of a Bible story, or what it says to be anyway. You find it in the 6th chapter of John, verses 1 through 15. And Jesus said, the scripture doesn't say it this way, but this is Bob Saywell's interpretation. Scripture says that Jesus said to a little boy, "What's that in your hand, son?" I think you'll remember the story when I begin to tell it. There was a great multitude of people. They were following Jesus. And Jesus looked at them and had compassion on them, and he knew they were hungry, and he wanted to feed them. And Jesus said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this to test Philip, for Jesus already knew what he had in mind to do. And listen to this. A grown man, a man that had walked with Jesus. And Philip answered the question, 8 months of wages would not be enough to buy bread so that each one of them might have a bite. Philip did not offer to place the resources into God's hands or into Jesus' hands. He just merely looked at Jesus and said, "Jesus is hopeless." Then, bless his heart, Andrew made a friend with a little boy in that group. And he came and he must have got red from here down, and with embarrassment perhaps. But Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up and said, "Here's a boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish." But how far will they go among so many? Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." And the little boy walked up. Can you see this little boy? You might think it's Andrew. If you think it's Andrew to put him in there, but I think it was a little boy. He said, "Son, give me that. Give me that." And Andrew had already made friends and knew that Jesus was fine. And he could tell by looking at Jesus what a guy that Jesus was. So that little boy just put his lunch into the hands of the master. And Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and began to distribute to the crowd. And everyone had sufficient amount, and there was even some left over. He did the same thing with the fish. Everyone had plenty. I tell you what, you know what? There are people who are saying that the church, that our children are the church of tomorrow. That's nonsense. Our children are the church of today. They're the church now. And because a little boy had faith enough to place what he had into the hands of the master, 5,000 people were fed. Have you ever thought about it? That miracle would never have taken place if it hadn't been for that little boy. The other Sunday morning, I was standing over here with Kristen, and Kristen was having a prayer, you remember, over each child. I placed my hand on top of each one of them's head. And as I placed my hand on their head, I was wondering which one of these would be a doctor, or one of these may become president of the United States. You see, kids are precious. Every single one of them. And you are the church now. And my prayer and my hope and my dream for you young people is that not only will you be the church now, but you'll be the church forevermore. And I believe that you will. Because I think that this church is doing the kind of nurturing and the education that we need to do. And I believe in you folks. I believe that you love them.